old mate from across the ditch, Avi Yemini, joins us. Nice to see you again. Avi, how are you?
Good morning, mate. Good, you?
Yeah, very, very well. I'll tell you what, it's the year where kind of serious issues and news refuse to die. Normally by now, I'm heavily into party season and work drinks and all that sort of stuff. But there's so much going on.
I'd expect to see you on the beach.
No, it is. There's a lot happening. You've had a hell of a year too. But look, can I just cover off a couple of things happening in Aussie that I knew you'd have a perspective on? I'm expecting in the next 24 hours in New Zealand that our government will roll back the work visa ban on Candace Owens. And I've read the legal thing that her lawyers have made on Australia. Hell, that was so weird, the way she just got banned without saying anything.
Yeah, look, I think Australia has a bit of form in that way. Over the last few years, we've seen people banned. I don't know what it's like in New Zealand.
Well, we banned you. You're the last guy we didn't let in.
I know. So she's in good company. Having said that, look, I'm obviously no Candace Owens fan.
Yeah,
I think she's got this sick obsession with Jews in the last couple of, since October 7. But having said that, I don't think censorship is ever the answer. And I'd encourage people that don't like her to stand up for her. Not for her, but for the idea of free speech. Because if you're willing to watch somebody you don't like, and when you fight for free speech, it is fighting for people you disagree with. And as ridiculous as some of the things she spouts at the moment, kicking her out means that you can be next. And it was the same argument I had when it was me. That's what I was telling people.
And you know what, Avi, that is so much where I'm at on this. And I had someone from the New Zealand Jewish Council on yesterday saying basically the same thing. We never asked for her to be banned. We actually don't think she should be. We should think a lot of the things she says should be treated with contempt, but let's defend her right to say them.
It feeds into everything she's been doing in the last few years. Look at her Twitter since she was banned from Australia, and then New Zealand. Yeah. She's just blamed the Jews again for that ban. And then, the mental gymnastics after the fact, when even in Australia, one of the ministers former ministers were banned from coming into Australia. One of the Israeli former ministers were banned from coming to Australia because she was too right wing. And so there is a pattern in Australia. It was expected. I was a bit surprised to see it in New Zealand. I thought New Zealand.
Oh, we just jumped off the same bridge you did. Oh, Australia's done that.
Yeah, I assumed though New Zealand, at least I was expecting the fact that now you don't have Jacinda Ardern, and I understood it was a bit more conservative, that they were going to think through their.
They are doing that right now. I expect to be covering a story that they've reversed the ban, as I said, within the next 24, 48 hours.
And having, the whole thing is unfortunate, because what they've done in banning her and then unbanning her has sold a lot of tickets for her things. What they originally set out to do, they've done the exact opposite by the way they've behaved.
Yeah, I get you. Look, Avi, I want to talk about some other stuff going on in Aussie, which I find absolutely fascinating. And I have to tell you, when I first hear this news, Australia's going to ban social media sites for under 16-year-olds. Initial personal reaction, great idea, because the ban on smartphones in schools, which this government in New Zealand introduced, is just widely lauded as fantastic and is helping kids at school and helping educational achievement. And I sit there and go, yes, that's great. And then it comes, how are you going to do that? And it now seems you do that by gathering data on all the adults who are using the internet. So what's the mood in Aussie, and what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's been an interesting last few weeks, because we have that, and prior to that we had the mis and disinformation bill that fell, and it seemed like the Liberal Party, so like the Conservatives here, were at first, the mis and disinformation bill was actually their idea, but they felt the mood. And the mood here was strong pushback. People were outraged by that. and then came the under 16 ban. And like you, I think anyone that has kids mostly support the idea of stopping them from having social media under the age of 16. I totally agree with that.
And you got kids.
What people's problem is the idea of the government being in charge, and only for the reason we just don't trust the government. The government says they're doing something for a certain purpose. The objective is just simply to stop the kids from being on social media. Frankly, we just don't believe them. You know, we especially in Australia, we lived, or also in New Zealand, we lived through COVID. We know that, and COVID is just the latest example. We know that old legislation in Australia, I know we used a lot of counterterrorism legislation to fight the citizens in Australia during COVID. They were applied to citizens in Australia. So people don't believe the government when they say we're fighting A and we need legislation to help us fight A, and that it is not then going to be used for something else, B, C, D, something else. Yeah. So the Conservatives here then, they realised that was what most people were fearing. So the average person doesn't care that we banned under 16-year-olds. Yeah. They just don't want the government to be in charge of that. And so the Conservatives fought to remove to ensure that there was an amendment to the bill saying that they cannot use digital ID to implement it, which in itself is a ridiculous idea, because either there's no way that they're going to be able to enforce it without ID. How do you stop under 16s? If it's just a little button you press, well, you've had to have a button saying you're over 13 on Facebook anyways for the last, since Facebook came. So they either can't enforce it, or there's going to be a backdoor to do it, and a way that social media companies can enforce that people do actually provide ID. So it's yet to be seen how it actually plays out. It did pass with that amendment. So that amendment that's meant to protect.
I was unaware of the amendment. That's interesting. Yeah. And all kids will just be getting a VPN. I thought the other thing, the more I thought about that issue, RV, and it is about the difference, the philosophical difference between asking the government to bring your kids up and having the guts to bring them up yourself. I'm not buying you a cell phone. You live in my house. You eat my food. I check your cell phone. If you're on social media, you're not. I'm going to take you off. And you'll be gated, or you'll be, you won't be able to go to the movies or anything. Parents just need to bloody stand up to their kids, run the risk of their kids saying, I'll hate you forever, and be bloody parents. It's not the government's job, and I don't want it to be.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that. You know, I think parents need to step up. It's hard. I laugh when people that aren't parents, that have no kids, kind of get involved in this conversation and tell people how to do it. It is hard to be a parent.
Yeah.
You know, I've got right now 4 teenagers. So we're talking about exact age. and Sean, they're my teenagers.
Yeah.
Just imagine what horror show I'm living through. So I get the idea, and and I also understand the temptation of passing the duty onto someone else. So, you know, it is sometimes extremely difficult, but I promise you, giving it to the government is the last thing you want to do.
Are your girls on social media?
So I've got 2 girls and 2 boys, and yes, they're on social media. It's one of those things that I've had to grapple with. That's why when I first heard it, I was like, it's a good idea. In theory. But we did create, you know, we've had that struggle back and forth, figuring out when they could join and what they could join. And it's been a conversation between me and their mum. You know what I mean? It's not like it's, you know, I come at it from my perspective. I understand the dangers, and I also understand the benefits of social media, but I certainly understand the dangers of social media for kids. And so we work through it ourselves. And also, look, social media is kind of a new thing that parents have to deal with. We just grew up at the end of kind of social media was just coming in as we were becoming adults, and now we're parents, and we've had to grapple with kids going through it. I think the next generation understand social media a lot better than we did, and I think that parents are just going to have to learn how to deal with it. I think giving the government more power that can be abused is the biggest danger. That's firstly, and secondly is, seriously, do you trust the government to dictate what your kids can and can't consume? Because I see a lot of nonsense that they're running in public libraries, at least here in Australia, that I would prefer my kids being on social media than going to attend some of those
a drag
events.
queen reading in your local public library, yeah.